They said I wasn't part of the family, just the nanny's daughter, while standing in a mansion I secretly owned. For years, I watched my mother serve that family like a ghost in her own skin. She scrubbed floors, raised their children, missed birthdays, and swallowed her pride. And me? I was just the helper's kid. That's what they'd whisper at family gatherings while pretending I couldn't hear. But I did. Every single word. Hey, if you've ever been treated like you're invisible or told you're not good enough, you're going to want to see how this story ends. Like, share, and subscribe if you're done letting people underestimate you. Now back to the story. When I was 9, Mrs. Pearson told her son to keep his toys away from the staff girl. She meant me. I stood there holding a tray of lemonade I didn't even pour, just shadowing my mother at work. And even then, they saw me as less. It stuck, like a tattoo you never asked for. But here's the truth they never imagined. I wasn't just a bystander in their perfect little world. I was building my own empire, right under their nose. Every summer, while their daughters went to horseback camp, I sat in libraries and taught myself code. Every evening, while my mother massaged Mrs. Pearson's feet, I was sending cold emails to tech investors with fake LinkedIn profiles and borrowed Wi-Fi. At 16, I created an anonymous AI tool that eventually got picked up by a Silicon Valley accelerator. But I never told anyone, not even my mom, because I knew what would happen. If I did, they'd twist it, take credit, or worse, sabotage it. So I stayed quiet. Invisible. Let them mock me, roll their eyes when I wore the same shoes 2 years in a row, and pretend I was just Ava from downstairs. Until this weekend. It was the Pearsons' 40th wedding anniversary. A huge garden party, white tents, champagne towers, gold-accented invitations. And guess who they invited just to help out? Me and my mother, again. But this time, I RSVP'd differently. And when I walked in, not through the service gate, but the front drive, wearing a sapphire blue dress worth more than their car, something shifted. Mrs. Pearson tilted her head, squinting. "Oh, you must be Ava, the nanny's daughter. Can you make sure the dessert table is refilled?" I smiled, took a deep breath, and before I could answer, my driver stepped out of the Rolls-Royce behind me and handed me a folder. "Miss Ava," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The deed transfer papers you requested, signed and completed." Silence. I turned slowly, met Mrs. Pearson's eyes, and said, "Oh, that dessert table. That's your job now." Mrs. Pearson's jaw didn't just drop. It shattered. The silence like glass. The crowd around us froze. Even the violinist stopped mid-note. Her husband, Mr. Pearson, blinked twice like his brain was buffering. What did you just say?" she stammered. I stepped closer, calm as ice. I said, "That dessert table is your job now. You're standing on my property. This estate? I bought it last month." People started whispering. The mayor's wife elbowed her husband. One of the grandkids tugged at their father's sleeve. "Daddy, is she joking?" Mr. Pearson finally found his voice. "This is nonsense. You're the help's daughter. You don't own anything. This house has been in our name since last month." I cut in, holding up the folder. "But the bank doesn't care about your name, just your debt, which you never paid." "Off," I turned and pointed at the valet line. "They also repossessed your cars 2 weeks ago. The only reason they didn't kick you out was because I paid the holding balance." "You little..." Mrs. Pearson spat, her voice trembling with rage. "Who do you think you are?" I stepped forward until I was inches from her face. "Someone you should have treated better." Everyone heard it. She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "No, don't say anything. Let me take you back in time for a second. Remember when I asked to use your computer when mine broke for school? You told me your internet wasn't for service children. So I biked 5 miles to the library in the rain. every day for a year. Gasps. Mrs. Pearson's daughter, Grace, flushed red. I didn't know. You didn't care, I snapped. None of you did. I was invisible until now. My mom appeared behind me then, still wearing her uniform, still humble, still quiet. She didn't understand yet. Not fully. She whispered, Ava, what's going on? I turned to her and held out the keys. To your new home. She froze. Mama, you're not their employee anymore, I said, my voice cracking. You're the owner's mother. She shook her head slowly, tears building. You bought their house? No, Mama. We did. The audience went silent again, but this time, not in shock, in awe. The people who had once called me the nanny's daughter were now realizing I was something else entirely. Then Mr. Pearson stepped forward and said, Fine, maybe you bought the place, but you'll never belong in our world. I looked him dead in the eyes. That's fine, I said. Because I didn't come to belong. I came to take over. And just as I turned to walk inside my mansion, the police cars rolled up. The flashing red and blue lights bounced off the mansion windows like fireworks, but no one was celebrating. Guests backed away as 2 officers stepped out of the squad car, their boots crunching on the stone driveway. Mrs. Pearson's voice wavered. What's going on? Why are the police here? Officer Daniels scanned the clipboard in his hands. We're here regarding multiple complaints of financial fraud and unpaid contractors tied to the previous owners of this estate. The Pearsons. Mr. Pearson's face drained of all color. This is a mistake. I paid everyone. No, sir. Officer Daniels cut him off. According to records, your family has been using forged expense reports to siphon funds from your own charity trust. And there's more. Illegal tax write-offs, unpaid workers, and bribes to zoning officials. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Grace clutched her champagne glass like a life raft. Dad, is this true? I didn't say a word. I just watched. Officer Daniels looked at me. Miss Ava, thank you for forwarding the documentation. You've helped us untangle a year-long investigation. Mrs. Pearson's head whipped toward me. You set us up? I smiled faintly. No, you set yourselves up. I just connected the dots. Flashback after flashback ran through my head. I remembered overhearing Mr. Pearson on calls as he bragged about hiding money in plain sight. I remembered watching Grace fake donation receipts. I remembered the gardener crying quietly one day when they refused to pay him after 6 weeks of labor. I wrote everything down. I'd been watching them longer than they'd been mocking me. You think you're better than us now? Grace snapped, her voice shaking with fear and fury. No, I said. I've always been better. You were just too arrogant to notice. Officer Daniels signaled to his partner. Mr. and Mrs. Pearson, you're coming with us. Mrs. Pearson lunged toward my mother in one last pathetic attempt at control. This is your fault. You poisoned her against us. But my mother stepped back, not afraid, not small, just tired. You raised your kids to believe they were gods, she whispered. I raised mine to survive. With that, the Pearsons were escorted toward the patrol car, their designer clothes soaked in humiliation. The guests didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just watched, stunned, guilty, exposed. Some started leaving quietly. Others glanced at me like they were seeing a ghost. No, not a ghost, a reckoning. And right before Mr. Pearson was pushed into the back seat, he turned and hissed, "This isn't over." I leaned in just enough for him to hear me. "Oh, Mr. Pearson," I whispered. "It hasn't even started yet." By nightfall, the Pearsons were gone, and so was every ounce of their illusion. Their name, once painted in gold above the estate gates, had already been taken down. I had the sign replaced before the party even began. Now, it read simply, "The Avery Foundation, named after my mother." Inside the mansion, the guests who remained were no longer sipping wine or comparing handbags. They were quiet, reflective. Some even apologized. But it didn't matter. I wasn't there for their approval. I was there for justice. Grace tried one last time to recover her dignity. She walked up to me slowly, her fake lashes trembling. "Ava, look, I know we didn't always treat you right, but this is extreme. You destroyed our reputation." I turned toward her and raised a brow. "You destroyed your own reputation the day you laughed at my mother crying in the pantry because she couldn't afford her blood pressure meds, while you bragged about buying a $3,000 purse." She opened her mouth. But I wasn't done. "You said I'd never amount to anything, that I'd end up cleaning toilets just like her." I stepped closer, voice low and calm. "Well, now you're unemployed, broke, and blacklisted in every major social circle from New York to LA. Grace's lips quivered. "You can't just erase people like that." "I didn't erase you," I said, tilting my head. "You wrote yourself out. I just turned the page." She left without another word. My mom and I stood on the balcony later that night, looking out over the garden where she used to serve canapes. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything, Mama. Just breathe. This peace? You earned it." She took a shaky breath. "I was so scared when you were little. I thought you'd grow up bitter." "I was bitter," I said honestly. "But I used it. Every insult they threw became fuel. Every door they shut pushed me harder." She smiled, eyes glistening. "And now?" "Now," I said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We build something better. For girls like me. For women like you. No more silence." The next morning, we held a press conference from the front lawn of the estate. Our estate. I announced the launch of a scholarship fund for domestic workers' children and a legal aid fund for exploited laborers. Every dime came from the tech company I'd built in secret, the same company the Pearsons once mocked me for working on instead of finding a real job. But now those investors were sitting in the front row, clapping, and when a journalist asked, "How does it feel to have taken down one of the wealthiest families in the state?" I just smiled. "I didn't take them down," I said. "I just stopped holding them up." 2 weeks later, the mansion didn't just feel different. It was different. Gone were the cold marble statues, the portraits of long-dead Pearsons staring down at guests like judges. In their place were murals painted by local artists, photos of housekeepers and landscapers, smiling, dignified, honored. The people who actually kept the place alive. And in the grand hall where my mother once stood silently waiting to be dismissed, she now stood at a podium, holding back tears. "Thank you," she said softly to the crowd gathered for the Avery Foundation's first official gala. "For the first time in my life, I feel seen." The applause was deafening. My mother, the woman who was once told to stay out of family photos, was now being celebrated in front of politicians, CEOs, and news anchors. I stood beside her, holding her hand. We weren't just rewriting our story. We were burning the old one down. Later that evening, as I walked the halls alone, I paused in front of the Pearsons' old study. Everything had been cleared out, except one thing. A dusty, leather-bound guest book. I opened it, flipping past all. The names of people who had once ignored me, mocked me, or called me the nanny's daughter. On the last page, I signed my name in bold black ink. Ava Avery Owner, founder, survivor. I closed the book and locked it away. Some stories don't need to be erased, just ended. As I stepped onto the balcony one last time that night, a breeze swept through my hair, and I looked out over the city lights below. The same city that once made me feel invisible. Not anymore. Because now, they knew who I was, and they would never forget it.